You meet her at a horse fair in a field outside a town whose name you'll forget but whose smell you won't. Diesel and wood smoke and frying dough and something older underneath all of it. Something that has been here longer than the roads, longer than the fences, longer than whatever government currently claims this particular patch of earth. She's standing near a gray mare, not touching the horse, just watching it the way people watch things they already own in their minds. She has gold at her ears, gold at her throat, a skirt that moves when she doesn't. You say something stupid about the horse. She doesn't look at you when she answers. But she answers. That's the first thing. That's the thing you'll come back to later, in the dark, when you're trying to trace the exact moment your life rerouted itself without asking your permission. She answered. Her name is Luminita. You will spend 3 months learning to say it correctly. She is Vlach Roma. Calderash, specifically. Her family are coppersmiths, have been for generations, though the craft has shifted now, adapted the way all living things adapt or die. Her father still works metal. Her brothers still work deals. Her grandmother still reads coffee grounds at a table covered in a cloth so embroidered it looks like a language you almost recognize but can't quite read. You will sit at that table exactly once in the early weeks, and the grandmother will look at you for a long time without speaking, and then she'll say something you don't understand, and Luminita will go very still beside you, and you will not ask what was said until much later. When you finally do ask, Luminita says she said you have a good face but a confused soul. You ask if that's a problem. She says it depends on what you do with it. You think she's being poetic. You'll learn later she was being precise. The first months are a negotiation you don't know you're in. There are rules you learn by breaking them, which is the only way you ever learn anything that actually matters. You learn not to touch her in front of her father. Not because affection is forbidden, but because there is a sequence to things, a correct order, and you haven't earned the later steps yet. You learn that showing up unannounced is entirely acceptable, but leaving without saying goodbye to at least 3 people is an insult that will be remembered. You learn that the women and men occupy different gravitational fields at family gatherings, parallel universes running simultaneously with their own conversations, their own humor, their own layered hierarchies, and that the fact that you keep drifting toward where Luminita is standing is noticed by everyone and commented on by no one. Directly. You learn that the food appearing in front of you is not optional, and that refusing it is a small violence no one will name but everyone will feel. You learn that when her cousin plays the violin it is not background noise. It is the thing. Everything else is background. You learn that silence in her world is not emptiness. It is a complete sentence, fully punctuated, and you would do well to read it carefully. You are not Roma. This is not a small thing and no one will pretend it is. You understand this intellectually before you understand it in your body, and the gap between those two kinds of understanding is where most of your pain will live. There is a word, gajo, which is what you are, what you will always be, not as a slur, not as a dismissal, just as a category of fact the way foreign is a fact, the way outside is a fact. You are from somewhere else. You carry different blood, different memory, different obligations, different silences. You don't have a vitsa, a clan line, a web of kinship that determines who you are before you open your mouth. You have not inherited your identity from a community that has survived centuries of persecution by holding itself together with deliberate, fierce, uncompromising cohesion. You are, in the deepest sense they use the word, unplaced. You belong to yourself, which sounds like freedom and is also, from where they stand, a kind of poverty. Luminita knows this. She has always known this. She never pretends otherwise and she never apologizes for it either, which you will come to understand is one of the most honest things about her. But she looks at you the way she looked at that gray mare. Like she's decided something in her own mind that she hasn't announced yet. Like the decision was made in a register you don't have access to, and the announcement is just a formality she'll get to when she's ready. You date if you can call it that. There is no dinner and a movie infrastructure to what exists between you. There are long afternoons at her cousin's house with 10 people in a room and the television on, and someone always cooking and someone always arguing about something you can't follow, and a child sleeping on a sofa through all of it with the serene indifference of someone who has never once gone to sleep in a quiet house and doesn't understand why anyone would want to. There are drives on roads that don't seem to be going anywhere particular where she plays music from her phone and teaches you words phonetically and laughs when you get it wrong, a real laugh, sudden and unguarded, and then corrects you with a patience that feels less like teaching and more like a gift being extended carefully with both hands. There are evenings outside where the summer goes on longer than it has any right to, and she tells you things about her life in pieces, not confessions exactly, just information offered the way you offer something valuable to someone when you're still in the process of deciding whether they can hold it without dropping it. You don't drop it. That matters more than you know at the time. You fall in love the way it always seems to happen with the people who rearrange you. Not in a single moment you can point to and say, there, that's when. In an accumulation. In the slow layering of specific things that individually mean little and collectively mean everything. The accumulation of the way she folds her hands in her lap when she's thinking through something difficult, perfectly still, like the stillness is helping. The way she argues, which is to say directly, without cruelty, without performance, as though she respects you enough not to wrap the hard thing in soft paper. The way she is with her nieces, ferocious and tender simultaneously, a combination that does something to your chest you don't have clean language for. The way she holds her faith, which is not the faith you were raised with and not the absence of faith either but something older and more physical, candles lit, specific words for specific moments, the dead treated as present because in her world they are. The way she notices things, the small specific things, and stores them and produces them later, weeks later, in a way that makes you feel like you are being truly paid attention to for maybe the first time in your adult life. You love her completely before you understand what loving her will require of you. The pregnancy is not planned. You could have a long conversation about whose failure of planning it was and it would not be useful and you do not have it, which is one of the first signs that you are more serious about this than you've admitted to yourself. She tells you on a Tuesday. Not a significant Tuesday. A Tuesday that was already a Tuesday before it became this one, an ordinary morning with ordinary light coming through an ordinary window. You're in her cousin's kitchen. Someone is frying something in the next room. She tells you in a voice that is completely level, and her eyes are on you with that familiar quality, that cataloging watchfulness, ready for whatever you're going to give her, prepared to receive it and file it accurately without flinching. You say the right things. You mean them. But the conversation that matters is one you are not in. That conversation happens in a language you don't speak, in a room you're not invited into, between Luminita and her mother, then her aunts, then her father, then eventually the grandmother who read your grounds and diagnosed your soul. That conversation spans 3 days. You know this because Luminita goes quiet for 3 days. Not cold. Quiet. There is a difference that matters enormously, and you are glad you've learned it by now. Cold is a wall built to keep you out. Quiet is a room she's asked you to wait outside while something necessary happens inside it, and the asking was implicit but real, and you wait. On the 4th day she comes to you and she sits down, and she says, "My family has things to say. Are you ready to hear them?" You say yes. You are not ready. You say yes anyway. What follows is the most thorough education of your life. And unlike every other education you've received, no one is trying to make it easy for you or frame it in terms designed for your comfort. They are telling you how things are. They are doing you the respect of not softening it. A child born to a Roma woman carries the mother's vitsa. This is the first and most foundational thing. The child will be Roma. Will be raised Roma. Will know what they are and where they come from and what that history contains, the beauty of it, and the weight of it, and the specific resilience that has been built over centuries of being unwanted by people who had more power than reason. This is not up for discussion. This is not a preference. This is as fixed as the fact of the pregnancy itself, as fixed as blood type, as fixed as the direction rivers run. You are not being told you have no role. You are being told your role does not include rewriting what the child is. You are Gajo. The child is not. These two truths will coexist in one small body and in one shared life, and you will have to build your way of living in the space that gap creates. Her father meets with you alone. Just the two of you in a room that smells like coffee and metal, a room where things have been made and repaired for years. He is a man built from patience and precision, and the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to raise its voice because it has never needed to. He looks at you the way people who work with their hands look at raw material. Assessing. Not unkind. He speaks some English. Enough for what he needs to say. He says, I am not against you. I am for my daughter. These are not the same thing, but they don't have to fight each other. You hold that sentence in your mouth for a long time before you swallow it. You'll spend months returning to it. There are things asked of you. Not demanded, not ultimatumed, asked, with the clear understanding that refusal is possible, but that refusal has a shape and a consequence, and that you should be honest about which answer is actually yours. They want the child baptized according to their tradition, which involves water and words and community in a way that your equivalent, if you have one, does not. They want the child to learn Romani, not as a hobby, not as a curiosity, but as a mother tongue or close to it, a language that carries a worldview inside its grammar, that cannot be fully separated from what it means to be who this child will be. They want the family present, specifically and fully present, in the way that Roma families understand presence, which is to say constantly, loudly, without the kind of advanced scheduling you are used to, without the particular Gajo convention of making an appointment to see the people you love. You say yes to all of it. You mean it the way you mean things before you understand their full weight, which is not dishonestly, just incompletely. The pregnancy changes Luminita in ways you watch carefully and say little about. She becomes, if possible, more herself. As though the thing growing in her has clarified something she already knew. She is less patient with performances, with approximations, with the kind of conversation that moves words around without moving anything else. She tells you one night that she used to wonder if she was too much. Too direct, too certain, too attached to her world in ways that made people outside it uncomfortable. She says this without self-pity, just as information, the way she always delivers the things that cost her. You tell her she is exactly enough. She looks at you for a long moment, and then she nods once, the way she nods when she's accepting something she's going to carry carefully. There are hard months. There are months where you feel the distance between your world and hers like a physical pressure, like trying to breathe at altitude. There are family gatherings where you are the only person who cannot follow the conversation, and you sit with that strangeness and try not to let it become resentment, because resentment would be a misunderstanding of where the problem lives. The problem doesn't live in them. The problem lives in the fact that belonging is not a feeling. It is a history. And you don't have their history, and you cannot borrow it, and you cannot rush it, and you cannot charm your way into it. You can only show up, correctly, repeatedly, over time, and let time do what only time can do. Her grandmother helps more than anyone. This surprises you. She is the one you expected to be the wall, the one whose coffee ground assessment of your confused soul seemed least like a welcome. But she is the one who teaches you things, deliberately, as though she has decided that if you are going to be adjacent to her family you will be properly educated. She teaches you the names for things. Not just the Romani words but the significance of things, what they mean, why they are done this way, what would be lost if they were done differently. She does this without sentimentality, the way you teach someone a craft. This is how you hold the tool. This is why. This is what you'll ruin if you hold it wrong. You sit at her table more than once now. She still reads the grounds sometimes. You stop asking what she sees. The birth is in spring, which feels too convenient to be true but is true anyway. A girl. 7 pounds 2 ounces, a quantity of black hair that seems like an overestimate for a person this size, and eyes that are dark and open and already seem to be doing the same thing Luminita's eyes do, which is to say looking at you like they're deciding something. Her name is decided in a process you are partly included in and mostly adjacent to. There are consultations. There are traditions around naming that predate you by generations. The name that emerges is one you couldn't have chosen and couldn't have predicted, and that fits her, you will discover, more precisely than names usually fit people, as though she arrived already knowing it and everyone else just caught up. You hold her in the hospital, and the thing that happens in your chest is not something you have words for, and you decide not to look for them. The early months are education in a different key. You learn to function on abbreviated sleep, which you knew would happen and which is still its own specific shock. You learn the rhythms of a household that is never entirely quiet and never entirely empty because people come, family comes, it is expected and welcomed, and the child is held by many hands, which is not, you are learning, a dilution of your role but an expression of how this family understands what a child is. A child is not a private matter. A child is a community matter. The community shows up accordingly. You have a job. You continue to have the job. You commute. You have conversations with people at work who know you have a new baby and ask how you're sleeping and don't know what else to ask because the context of your life is not something that fits neatly into the kind of small talk that fills office kitchens. You answer simply. You're tired. She's beautiful. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is also the most complicated it has ever been, which are not contradictions, which are just two true things existing in the same space, which is, you're learning, the actual nature of most important things. Luminita goes back to work 2 months later. She works in a way that has nothing to do with her family's history and everything to do with who she specifically is, which is to say she is precise and she is fast and she does not tolerate inefficiency or dishonesty in any form. She is good at her job the way people are good at things that are actually in alignment with their character. You watch her navigate between worlds, her families and the wider worlds, with a fluency you will never have and have stopped grieving not having. It is hers. It fits her the way the name fits the child. The years that follow are not a single story. They are many small stories happening simultaneously, the way life actually is as opposed to the way you narrate it afterward. There is the story of you and Luminita, which is a long, unfinished story about two people who are genuinely different in ways that matter and who have decided that the mattering is not a reason to stop. You argue sometimes. The arguments are almost never about what they appear to be about. They are about the deeper things, about whose world the life you're building is organized around, about whose assumptions get to be the default, about the 10,000 small decisions that add up to identity. You are both stubborn. You are both, it turns out, wrong at roughly equal rates. This helps. There is the story of you and her family, which is a story about what it costs to be genuinely included in something and whether you can pay it without losing yourself, and the answer you arrive at slowly, painfully, with wrong turns, is that the self you were protecting was itself a construction, was itself a story you'd been told, and that what you're building now is not less real for being different from what you started with. There is the story of your daughter, which is the story that contains all the others. You watch her grow into herself with the particular attention of someone who understands that what's happening is unrepeatable. She is Roma. She is also half of you. She navigates this the way children navigate everything their parents cannot, with a naturalness that makes the adults around her look at each other sometimes with an expression that is not quite shame and not quite awe but lives between the two. She speaks Romani better than you. She will always speak Romani better than you. You made your peace with this on a specific afternoon when she was 4, and she said something to her great-grandmother in a full sentence with correct inflection, and the old woman laughed, the real laugh, and looked at you across the room with an expression that was the closest thing to approval you have ever received from her, and you understood that this was the point. Not your fluency. Hers. The grandmother dies when your daughter is 6. The loss moves through the family like weather, present in everyone at once, impossible to avoid or outrun. You sit at the table that has her cloth on it, the embroidered one that looks like a language, and you drink coffee and you do not speak and you understand finally, fully, in your body as well as your mind, what that table means. What it has always been. After the funeral, Luminita's father shakes your hand. Not the assessing handshake from years ago, the one that was measuring raw material. A different one. The kind that means something has been decided, finally, permanently in your favor. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. You drive home that night through roads you now know the way you know your own face. Your daughter is asleep in the back seat. Luminita is in the passenger seat watching the dark outside the window, quiet in the way that is not emptiness. The gold is at her ears and her throat. She hasn't taken it off all day. You think about the horse fair. The gray mare. The woman standing near it with her mind already made up. You think about the coffee grounds and the confused soul and the question of what you do with it. Here is what you know at the distance of years that you did not know then. There is no clean version of this story. There is no version where you enter someone's world without cost, without the specific labor of becoming someone larger than you were, without the loss of certain certainties you didn't know you were holding until they were gone. There is no version where love is enough by itself, where feeling is sufficient substitute for the work of genuine understanding. You had to earn your place in this life the way you earn anything that is actually worth having, slowly, incorrectly, repeatedly, without the guarantee of success at any point in the process. But here is also this. Your daughter knows who she is. In a world that will spend considerable energy trying to confuse her about that, she has a foundation that was built before she could walk, laden by hands that understood what was at stake. She knows her name, and what it carries. She knows the table and the cloth and the music and the words and the long memory of a people who survived by remembering. And she knows you. Your confused soul and your good face and the 10,000 small ways you showed up, imperfectly, faithfully, across all the years. You pick up her coffee in the morning before she wakes, the way you've learned she likes it. You drive the roads you now know. You sit at tables you have slowly, incrementally, year by year, been invited further into. You didn't know what you were starting at a horse fair in a field you can't quite find on a map. You know what it became. You do it again without the pause.